So the downside of everyone being in just a few of us at the start of this session is, of course, that if you leave, I'll notice. Just wanted to point that out. Thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate that. I'm Matt Siegelman. I'm the CEO of Burning Glass Technologies, and we are lucky to have as our work what we call cracking the genetic code of the job market. We look at millions of jobs in order to figure out what are the jobs that are in demand and to see how the job market is moving. And increasingly, what we've come to realize about the job market is that the job market isn't actually moved so much by jobs at all as it is moved by skills. And so I'd like to talk to you about how we're seeing skills unlocking opportunity for the world of higher education and for employers alike, and how skills in turn also unlock mobility for workers. Now, not a day goes by without us hearing about all of the potential for disruption and displacement in the job market. And when we look at all the data that we do about jobs, it's easy to think not so much about our work being analyzing the job market as being seismologists sort of monitoring Vesuvius. We can all see this coming. And whether 10% of people are going to get displaced or whether 50% of people will get displaced, they're huge numbers either way. So what I wanted to do is to share with you a little bit of the way that we've been looking at both this challenge, but also where the opportunity lies here. This is from some work that we did, a report that we created for the World Economic Forum in Davos this year, which we called Toward a Reskilling Revolution. And we took automation as a given. We took displacement as a given. And we said, what happens when people are displaced? Let's take people who are in high automation risk occupations, and let's look at the underlying skills of those occupations, and then let's be able to look at what kind of options they have. And in the report that we put together on this, together with Boston Consulting Group, one of the things which we found was that most people, if without any retraining, people who are in high automation risk occupations, on average have 1 to 2 options available to them, and they are negative options. They represent a significant salary loss. By contrast, with just about 6 to 12 months of retraining, most people have 10 options of where they could go, again, with just a few months of training. And those job adjacencies pay, instead of $8,000 less, pay about $16,000 a year more. So we're talking about a really significant opportunity to change the fortunes of millions of people simply by thinking about the skills that are moving through the economy. And here's just a bunch of examples of how this works. These are examples exist across the job spectrum, whether you're talking about a receptionist who with 4 or 5 additional skills could be an event planner making almost a third more, whether you're talking about a retail worker who could become a retail manager with a few extra skills. I want to pause on retail for a second because any analysis of how skills work to unlock opportunity that doesn't start with retail workers is missing a huge part of the problem. As we all know, there are millions of people working on the low-wage treadmill of retail work and who seem to be stuck. And we all know, we've all seen the headlines that Amazon opened its first retail store that didn't involve any cashiers. And we can all see the handwriting on that wall, whether it comes next year or 5 years from now, is irrelevant. And what we did is we looked at what are the cow paths that actually lead out of automation. In addition to touching millions of jobs each day, we touch hundreds of millions of people's resumes and of career histories. And we could see that there are a bunch of ways that people actually are able to successfully move out of retail, and where they do, there's significant opportunity to both reduce automation risk and actually get paid more. And when we say get paid more, we mean not a little bit more, but we're talking about 30% more or above. So let me highlight some of those cow paths here. And you're seeing in orange a set of routes that people have taken. When you look at millions of people who started in retail and look at where they went, there's a bunch of directions that people can take out. And I'm going to pause on one of them here and focus on the IT one, because it seems counterintuitive. Wait, people in retail and they go on to IT. Is that feasible? So let me ask you to imagine somebody who's working in Best Buy. Maybe they're selling consumer appliances. With a little bit of training, they're selling consumer electronics. With a little bit more training, they're setting up people's consumer electronics and fixing people's consumer electronics. And from there, they move to an IT help desk role. Each of those steps is just a couple of skills apart from the one before. And yet, we've gone from somebody with no opportunity to somebody who's in a golden gateway of opportunity. Ultimately, skills provide the mechanism for people to arbitrage in themselves and for employers to arbitrage in their own workforces. We all know from Econ 101, arbitrage is that buy low, sell high thing. And the ability for somebody who is, let's say, a graphic designer who's making $54,000 a year, but with some front-end web development experience to make 76, is a significant arbitrage opportunity. And we know that picking up HTML5 doesn't cost $17,000. Those are opportunities for people to achieve almost immediate and very sizable, in a lot of cases, life-changing gains. And again, whether we're talking about a software skill here, whether we're talking instead about the admin who can, instead of making $32,000 a year, make $40,000 if she's learned Salesforce, whether we're talking about a food service worker who can achieve a $10,000 increase in salary by learning management skills, which is absolutely life-changing for somebody in food service work. These opportunities exist across the spectrum. Here's another example, and some of these skills are ones that indeed, in fact, open up opportunity across a broad range of careers. Here's the example of data skills, and looked at a disparate array of occupations, all of which achieve a significant premium for having data skills, from the K-12 administrator who makes $10,000 a year if she's able to study student data and analyze student data, to the healthcare administrator, to the production manager who makes a $33,000 premium if she's able to actually analyze what's going on in that plant. So when we talk about opportunity, all of this needs to be translated back into how we help various people, how various constituencies can exercise and realize that opportunity. And I want to talk about both how that, not only how that works for higher education, but how it works for employers, and of course, most importantly, how it unlocks opportunity for learners and workers themselves. So let's talk about within the world of higher education first, because some of that opportunity is about looking at existing programs and existing resource and how they can be made more effective. Here's an example of IT jobs. We all know that most, if you look at what higher education is teaching in the world of IT, for the most part, those are computer science programs. But computer science is oriented toward that thing in the middle that we have encircled, which is development. And as you can see, that's actually only about a third of tech jobs that are out there. There's many more jobs in networking and support, a lot of jobs in database management. How does that line up with what we're teaching today? And how does that enable us, and when you start to reposition existing programs, how does that open up a broad array of new opportunities for graduates? In a lot of this, at the same time, this raises important questions about where degrees are the right solution at all. Here's an example of the world of the MBA. What we find is actually that the MBA is worth less than the sum of its parts. And if you take individual MBA level skills and look at how much they pay, and you compare it to how much the average MBA makes, the average job posting for an MBA gets paid about $85,000 a year. But if you have project management certification, if you've got strategic leadership skills, if you've got Six Sigma skills, all of those pay well into the six figures. You don't necessarily need an MBA, and so that represents, on the one hand, a challenge to existing higher ed structures, and at the same time, opportunity for higher education to create new programs of study, both degreed and non-degreed, that are aligned to those arbitrage opportunities in people's careers. At the same time, skills and this notion of arbitrage also enables people to make existing degrees more effective. Take the example of liberal arts students who overall lag the market, but with a few additional skills, all of which are acquirable on the peripheries of an education without disrupting the core academic program, could be making not only as much, but in some cases more than STEM grads, with the addition of just a few acquirable skills. This is opportunity for employers as well. And when we talk to employers, so much of this comes down to how they can figure out what their current talent shape looks like. Who are they today? Because most companies don't know. And where is their talent need likely to go? And whether you look at what's trending in the market, an array of predictive indices, whether we're looking instead at what does best of breed look like. Here's a comparison between the mechanical engineer job descriptions at GM on the right and Tesla on the left. And you can see, even though it's nominally the same job, both for car companies, you'd see that these almost look unrecognizable to one another. They're different conceptions of the role. And so if you're GM and you're trying to figure out where's the puck going, this gives you a very good sense. And from there, you can then figure out, how do I acquire those skills that we're going to need that we're not hiring for today? We're lucky to do this work with a broad array of folks, some of them in the world of education, many of them in the world of HR and human capital management, employers, and as well as folks in the public sector and an array of research organizations we're proud to work with. Overall, we are an organization that sees our work as cracking the genetic code of the market and applying that into applications which are designed around key decision points that people need to make, be they in the world of higher education, be they in the world of corporate talent strategy and the like. We bring together 320 people, a huge strength in data science, what we call knowledge architecture and taxonomies and ontologies and data collection, to be able to understand what's going on in the job market and to be able to make sense of a huge amount of data that we collect on a daily basis. We see our work and we see our opportunity at Burning Glass as being able to unlock opportunity through skills. We can all see the mismatches that exist in the economy today. Those mismatches, some people call them skill mismatches, some people call them skill gaps. But we can all feel them. We can feel all the people we know all the people who are being disrupted. We know all the people who find themselves starved for opportunity even in a white-hot job market. The ability to make sure that all sides of the job market have the information they need in order to plan more effectively and participate more effectively in the job market is work that we feel lucky to do and which represents significant opportunity for us as a company. I'd love to take your questions. And if there's no questions, oh, thank you so much. So it's the question is, what kind of data do we have on how people make decisions about which jobs they apply for? And I think it's a great question. What we look at this from a couple of frames. So one of the things that we do is we look at what jobs are proving to be hard to fill. And that becomes a very interesting view on where the gaps are in the economy and where those gaps seem to be really supply-demand driven, right? You know, in some cases, gaps are because there's just not enough workers, and where those gaps are actually being driven by the demand side of the equation, by employers articulating requirements that may be impeding some people from applying. And so, in fact, we've been doing a lot of research on that. We're also starting to look at the question of, do employers say what they mean? And so our work with employers is increasingly about helping employers send more effective signals, because what they say matters, and what they say costs them money in ways they may not realize. Other questions? Please. So the question is, hey, how can employers think more broadly? And I think this frame of skills is exactly, holds the key to that. Because so much of the way that employers are thinking about things today is based upon a preconceived view of what title am I looking for. And when you can look at the skill DNA of a role, and we find that jobs are actually defined by a DNA. When you look at millions of examples of a given kind of job, there's a fairly consistent genome that those jobs evolve. And so in the same way that we can start with supply for people who are being disrupted and say, hey, what other opportunities are there? There's a great opportunity for employers to be able to search in a new way, and that's based on skills. Now, some employers, to your point, are analytically sophisticated. Many of them are not sophisticated, but they don't need to be. Because what we can do is we can infer the likely skills that they are referring to. We can help them validate what they're asking for, and then we can point them toward alternative talent pools that have a lot of the same characteristics. That is a useful frame not only for being able to hire cheaper and faster, but also for being able to access greater diversity. Mobile app developers are 9% women. They are not the same job as web designers, who are 52% women, but taking web designers and training them to be web developers is a discrete step. Training web developers to be mobile app developers is a discrete step, and you are suddenly making diversity not a zero-sum game. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this. I appreciate your coming along.